This is The Sports Source, presented by Bill Hotz and Associates, and by Renewal by Andersen, with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into The Sports Source, presented today by Renewal by Andersen. Happy to have you with us. We have a tremendous show. Tennessee escapes yesterday against Alabama. They could be ranked #1 in the nation when the new polls come out. T. Martin, don't know if you heard this, T. Martin's coming back to Tennessee as an assistant coach. We got to discuss all of that, plus some recruiting. Juwan Jennings stays, coach is leaving. Did Alabama show? There's too much to discuss right now. Let's get right into this show. First segment brought to you by Renewal by Andersen. Call, buy, and schedule installation by January 31st. Gets you 15% off windows and patio doors. If you do it by January 31st, it gets you 15% off windows and patio doors. No money down, no interest payments for 12 months. Save money on your energy bill, increase the value of your home. That's what happens when you visit rbaknoxville.com, when you call that number on your screen, or when you visit their showroom at 1828 Mid-Park Road, Building G, Room G, something G. Look for that. The OG, Renewal by Andersen. All right, let's welcome in today's panel. We have right here Mark Pancratz. It's Yves Pancratz, straight from France. Mark, of course, a former assistant under Bruce Pearl and Conzo Martin here at Tennessee. Right there, Mike Strange.
Mike Strange.
Mike Strange, Lestrange. Right down there, Josh Ward and Charles Demetrius Cavaleris III.
Atta boy.
Okay, the Greek freak. All right, Tennessee wins another easy one over Arkansas on Tuesday. It's just a breeze with this team. Everything's just being laid out on the table for them. And then yesterday, they have to scratch and claw and come from behind to win 71-68 against Alabama. Tennessee's 12th win in a row. It's the first time they've done that since, 75-76, Ernie and Bernie. But it was a nail-biter. Here's my question, did that game show that the Vols are overrated? I got a lot of that on social media yesterday and from friends and family. That game proves they're overrated because it showed some flaws. Or you played like crap, you shot terribly, and you still won. Did that game actually expose strengths? Your take, Mark Pancratz.
Well, I hope it brings some people back to reality from the standpoint that we are invincible.
Right.
We do have a ton of greatness about us, but there are some things that we've got to improve. One of the things that stood out to me is just our consistency. Our defense allowed us to hang in. Bowden, the way he played the last 10 minutes on Petty, who had went off for 30 points with about 10 minutes left still in the ball game. The way we made free throws down the stretch, guys kept their composure. And being able to go to that small guard lineup with Lamonte Turner back. We didn't play Kyle Anderson much down the stretch because Alabama was stretching us out. So there's a lot of good to take from it, but there's also some stuff that I know we'll talk about later that I think we can learn from as well.
Does this expose more strength of this team or flaws in this team?
I don't know about either. It's just you play 30 games. You're going to have stretches where you're going to have days where you shoot good, days where you don't shoot good. They played a great first half. So again, it's like the Arkansas game. They didn't play so great a second half. But I don't put too much weight on flaws or weaknesses out of this. Just another day in a basketball season where you survive.
Well, here's the thing. We said it before the SEC season started. The average champion since the league went to an 18-game schedule finishes 15-3. This team is probably, if you win the championship, this team's probably still going to lose 3 games at some point. Yeah. Somebody said, well, you guys overrated them yesterday. I'm like, no, the only people who overrated them, and this exposes, are the people who thought they were going to go undefeated. Yeah. Josh and Chuck, strengths, weaknesses, what'd you take away from that game?
I think the game exposed a weakness, and that is on the defensive side, and I think that was a big takeaway from Rick Barnes' side of it. But I also agree with him when he said that Tennessee needed that. Yep. I thought that in the second half. That's the first truly competitive game Tennessee's had at home this season. They haven't had one. So to be tested until the end, a positive can be that Tennessee sees that after the game, that there are still things to work on.
Right, you still found a way to win. So that's a huge positive. And this, for whatever reason, this is not a good matchup for Tennessee. Don't forget, last year when you went to Alabama, you lost by 28. That was your worst loss of the whole season. The thing it exposed to me was, how do you defend the catch and shoot? Boy, they let him get some shots. And remember what Dane Bradshaw said? There's a reason somebody else is open. But I think that's what Rick Barnes was saying. He felt like there were too many times jogging back on defense. This team to me, has to really defend, because the last 2 games they've gotten into this, like Mike pointed out in the first half, great start, and then just trading baskets.
I think one thing that Josh made a point of, kind of to steer off of that, I was thinking yesterday these kind of games are good to have under the belt, because once you get to tournament play, it's not going to be a run of blowouts. It's more than likely going to be this kind of grinded out thing, so it's good to have these under your belt. Let me put up yesterday's box score for you. These are just the guys that got double-digit minutes. I'll let you digest that as we continue to talk. Mark, you had a point to make.
Well, I think a couple things. One, on the contested jump shots, I think it boils down to our ability to be able to keep guys in front of us. You know, when we're allowing penetration, it's leading to open jump shots. But the other thing, and Barnes obviously knows his team better than we do, sometimes people would say, a lot of people tell me yesterday, well, you rather learn from winning, right? Sometimes you don't want to learn from winning, because that just hides some of the mistakes. Guys aren't willing to say, you know what, Coach, you're right, I am messing up, because they're still getting W's.
So the lesson isn't as strong unless you actually lose.
Unless you actually lose. But I do think what shows Tennessee a difference between the Tennessee team now and Alabama, who some people had preseason ranked, the difference what shows this team is good is the fact that we can close out games. Alabama was terrible down the stretch. They had open shots, they missed them. They had free throws, they couldn't knock down a free throw. Tennessee showed their character and their strength to be able to close that game out.
Well, and you look around the top 4 just this week. I mean, you saw other teams that were losing too. I think Wisconsin was 11-5. They beat Michigan. Syracuse was 11-5 or 12-5. They beat Duke. This was not a bad Alabama team at 11-5 that came in here. The difference is you held on and won. When these other teams played poorly, they lost. Now, that doesn't mean you're always going to win when you play poorly, but I think there's a positive to be taken from that, because you guys know I'm a football guy more than a basketball guy, for the simple reason that I think there's more luck involved in basketball. Don't shoot me. Usually, hot or cold has a whole lot to do with who wins and loses a game. I know that the style of defense you play plays into it, but you admit some of it, some nights you're just not going to hit, other nights you are. Usually if you're cold, it's hard to win. They won when they were cold. I'll give them credit for that. Last thing I want to throw out here. This team, it looked a little to me like the Kansas game, in that there were stretches where they just kept settling for bad jumper after bad jumper after bad jumper. And unlike the Kansas game yesterday, they weren't falling at all. It seemed in the last 4 minutes they started working it back inside, and things broke their way at that point. This team, we've said it from the first of the season, Mike, they have to work it inside out.
They do. I mean, if you got Grant Williams, he should get a touch inside. Kyle Alexander was not a big factor yesterday when you look at the inside game, but and I think they can learn from this. I think that they can look at those last few minutes and, the Grant Williams trying to make something happen, charges. I think those are, even though they won, I think those will be real teachable moments.
All right. I'll give Williams some credit too, and they called it out yesterday on the broadcast. That block he made against Petty, where he came clean from the paint to the three-point line to block that thing.
Big play.
I'm exaggerating a tad. It was a heck of a block, heck of a defensive play, and turns out it might have been the difference in the ball game.
Does anybody think that shot wasn't going down?
Yeah, really.
Exactly the way he was shooting. Yeah. Okay, we have a lot more to talk about with Tennessee basketball as this show goes on, including we're going to take a look at whether or not Tennessee deserves to be number 1 in the nation. Will they be number 1? Does it even matter to be ranked that highly in college basketball? Basketball polls, how much do they mean mid-season anyway? We'll discuss all that. Lots more on basketball. Football's next. We're going to talk about the return of a hero. T. Martin returns to Tennessee. That is next. Come on back.